I'm sure you've heard the big noise about the market. It's hot right now. Homes are flying off the shelves and sellers are shocked by the prices that their homes are bringing. But you might have also heard the whispers. Is this another 2007? Is the market about to crash? Are we in a bubble? What's going to happen next? Well, hopefully I can answer some of those questions for you. I'm Zack Smith, a realtor from Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm going to talk to you about where the market might be headed next. Now, to understand where the market could be headed next and why it's only a might and we can never know, we have to understand how we got here in the first place. There are three main market forces holding this whole frenzy together, and we're going to talk about what those mean for the market and what they might mean for where it's headed next. First up, interest rates. You've heard about the crazy high home prices right now, but you've probably also heard about the crazy low interest rates right now. For context, in 2007, a great interest rate was around 6.5%. In early 2019, 4% on a 30-year note was considered a pretty good deal. Make that the 2% some home buyers have seen in the last year, and you've got a downright bargain. So what does this mean for home prices? Well, as a rule of thumb, for every 1% change in interest rate, you'll see a 10% change in the monthly payment you pay for the same priced home. So if your monthly payment in early 2019 with that 4% interest rate was $1,000 a month, if you were to refinance that note today, you would see a payment of around $800 a month, to 20% change for the 2% change in interest rate. Now, in most market situations, an interest rate doesn't directly affect the price of the home. But when we head into a seller's market and buyer competition gets really fierce, buyers are willing to pay more because ultimately they look at their monthly budget to decide how much they want to spend on a home. If you're not talking about the lowest entrants that are just saying, this is what I can afford and this is what I need to get, you're going to be looking at how much can you pay each month, how much do you want to pay each month, and that's going to determine the price that you spend on a home. So in this hot market, if a home in early 2019 with 4% interest rates being common, was $100,000. Today, with 2% interest rates being common, you could expect that that home would be at least $120,000, a 20% increase. And in most rural areas where this is the main market force that we see, this is also a pretty accurate guide to what prices have done over the last couple of years. As we see interest rates drop, we see home prices go up on a pretty one-to-one correlation. But Nashville, at least, isn't rural by any stretch of the imagination, at least not anymore. So what are those other market forces? Well, the next one, and it's probably pretty obvious to most people, is the sheer number of buyers in the market. But where are they all coming from, right? You start to think about it, and there can't be that many people coming to Nashville, Austin, Denver, these other hot cities from just California and New York, right? Well, it turns out there are a lot of people from those states that are moving to these hot cities right now. But because of the pandemic, also a lot of people are changing their living situation. People that have rented for a long time are deciding to buy. Renters that have been rooming together are deciding to separate and find their own spaces. And a lot of people are deciding that now's the right time to start a family. They've delayed their plans for a few years and they want more space as their family grows. Finally, one other reason that it seems like there are so many buyers in the market is that people are reshuffling their priorities. People really used to focus on commute times. If you were 15 minutes from downtown, that was a great spot. But now you don't have a commute. You're working from home at least a few days a week for most people. And so why would you live downtown when you can live in whatever part of town that you've always wanted to? People are really reshuffling their values and what they prioritize. And this shift plays havoc with prices in the market. Oftentimes, a 5 or 10 minute drive can mean a massive change in price for a very similar house. Especially new buyers can really take advantage of this if they're willing to look at those other communities, because there are a lot of great deals to be found that people are just passing over because, again, their priorities have shifted. So the obvious question to ask then is, well, if all these people are willing to move to this one specific community, why aren't builders just building more houses and solving the problem? Well, that's the third market force. Those builders are trying as hard as they can. There's two main things that you have to understand about why builders aren't just popping up houses on every empty lot that you can see. And depending on where you live, it might really seem like they are popping up houses on every lot that you can see. But the first of the two things that we need to understand is that it takes a long time to get a lot legally ready for building. There's a lot of zoning, a lot of setup, a lot of planning, a lot of permits. builders take a long time to actually get ready to start building on a house. And a lot of this is covered by developers, which actually set up a subdivision or a neighborhood to be ready for specific home builders to come in and build a home. But on both sides of this problem, there's a lot of time involved between deciding to build and actually getting a property built. Now, you might be thinking the market's been hot for a couple of years, but you have to keep in context what's happened to these builders and developers over the past decade. Builders, if they weren't wiped out entirely by 2007, or at the very least spooked a lot. A lot of them have taken a long time to really get back into the market, back into the process of building, because they've been concerned about what's going to happen next, what's going on. They got burned and they don't want to again. So even though builders are now trying to build as much as they can, it took them a long time to get to that point. On top of all that, builders are facing a second major challenge, and that's labor and material shortages. Now, material shortages we've all sort of gotten used to during COVID, and it's pretty well attributable to the pandemic. As people go into lockdowns, people stop working, people have other issues, supply chains are disrupted, material prices go up, and that's what's happened, and it's pretty well understood by most people at this point. However, labor shortages, at least in the housing market, are a lot more complicated than that. For years now, skilled trades have seen labor pools decline. In housing, carpenters, plumbers, electricians, and more are all retiring without replacements. This is causing long-term problems for housing, and it hits builders, actually again, in a double whammy. First, builders have to pay more a lot of times to get the same job done. That directly raises the cost to build a home. Second, builders, just like normal home buyers, often finance their build process. They finance the home that they're investing in. And what that means is, for every month longer it takes to build a home, because they're having trouble scheduling these workers, they pay debt service, taxes, fees, and other quiet costs, as we call it. And that adds up over time. So between a shortage of materials that raises the prices directly for those materials and a shortage of labor that increases time to build and the cost to build, home builders are having to pay more to get the house built, and it's taking them longer to do it. So that's most of how we got here. Low interest rates, raising prices, buyer pressure, amplifying all the little features in the market that are starting to see changes, and inventory shortages that mean builders are not putting houses into hot markets. But what you might note is that unlike 2007, where subprime or risky mortgages led to the market crash, most of the inventory shortages right now are just that, inventory shortages. There's not enough homes to fill buyer wants and needs. What does that mean for what comes next? Well, it means that home prices have rushed ahead of where they should be. Even though, at least in Nashville, we've seen about 50% appreciation in the last 5 years, that doesn't mean that we're going to see appreciation continue at that same rate. What I see having happened in the market right now is we've brought ahead prices. So I don't see so much of a crash as a stagnation of prices. But where prices will stagnate and level off is hard to say. The market could still go up more, which would be amazing. It could be about settled out to where prices are going to stay for quite a while. Or we could have jumped the gun a little bit and be past where we should be in the market. All these are possibilities for what might have happened. And we have this looming additional threat of labor and material shortages outside of housing, painting a frightening picture for inflation and the broader economy. And a broad economic collapse always plays havoc on the housing market. Even if prices didn't crash when that happened, buyer pressure from new buyers would be totally vacuumed out of the market and prices would stagnate instantly. All that said, what should you do about it? You're thinking about buying a home, making a move, selling your current home. What should you do? Well, I think that unless you're planning on buying a home just to get the appreciation out of it as an investment, you should probably just do whatever you wanted to anyway and not worry too much about the market. There's great deals to be found, and ultimately you have to live where you're buying a house. If you're thinking about buying an investment property, make sure that it's cash flow positive so that no matter what happens to prices, you're going to be able to support that investment and hold on to it throughout whatever comes next. If you have a specific concern in mind, feel free to message me. I'll be happy to talk to you about the risks that have come up with that situation and what some other home buyers or home sellers might have done in a similar situation. And with that, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.